my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. The festive season is upon us. We should be getting the Mandalorian Season 3 final trailer sometime this month, and then on January the 4th, the Bad Batch Season 2. Super exciting stuff. And speaking of Mando, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Still in line with theory and speculation, but of a different kind. We're going to be talking about Jar Jar Binks.
Misa back!
Now, he's not a character that really comes up in my videos much. I predominantly do news updates, and even when I do theory videos like this one, he's not a character that really comes into conversation. Of course, prior to the Kenobi series, there was a little bit of speculation that maybe Ahmed Best would return to the role, but it never came to fruition. But you never know, there's always the chance in Kenobi Season 2 or a different series. And in line with the stance that Lucasfilm under Disney have taken in regards to the CGI characters from the prequels, they don't seem to acknowledge him much, if at all. Personally, I would love for Ahmed Best to have another shot at it. He was horribly bullied after The Phantom Menace, and the man is a wonderful human being. So many of us who grew up with the prequel trilogy are adults now, and we don't have the anger or vitriol towards the character that many fans did at the time. The great news is, in canon, he's very much still alive further down the timeline, more specifically during the New Republic era, which also means the Mandalorian timeline. Now, as you guys know, I've been praising the Aftermath trilogy endlessly for the last few years, and in my opinion, the best installment of that trilogy, Empire's End, we actually come across Jar Jar, who's been exiled from the Gungans. He's now a homeless street performer outside of Theed's royal palace. Now, the reason he's been exiled for all these years is because people haven't forgotten that he's the one who gave emergency powers to Palpatine that would eventually lead to the creation of the Empire. Now, we've had a vague allusion to Naboo with the N1 starfighter in the Book of Boba Fett, and I would love if the creators on the show took us to Naboo. Imagine Din Djarin pulling in and meeting Jar Jar Binks. Think of the dynamic between a serious Din Djarin, who is a father figure, compared to a more juvenile Jar Jar Binks. Not to mention that Jar Jar would obsess over Grogu, although he shouldn't be allowed to hold him. And look, I get it, I probably sound really crazy to some of you for even suggesting this, but with all of the tie-ins Lucasfilm have been doing, this is one aspect of the prequels that deserves a swan song. A really fitting tribute, even if it's just a one-off mission to a planet that George had a lot of fun creating, before all the backlash of course. But Jar Jar Binks is a fun yet enigmatic character, but he's so misunderstood. And granted, he was very over the top, and his humour was very much aimed at children, but I can imagine a more somber, serious, and yet still characteristically juvenile Jar Jar Binks working so well in the context of The Mandalorian, or maybe some other show. But as a prequels fan, I would love to see more Gungans in the Star Wars universe. We've not seen many under Disney. But I suppose another question is, would the planet of Naboo fit into The Mandalorian? And would they even want to reprise a fully CGI species like the Gungans? The chances might seem low, but crazier things have made a return to the Star Wars universe. And bear in mind, Gungans have actually been name dropped in the show. In Season 1, Bill Burr's character Migs Mayfeld jokingly asked why Din can't remove his helmet, saying, quote, "I wonder what you look like in there, maybe he's a Gungan." And then he puts on a Gungan accent and says, "Is that why user don't want to show your face?" Now this was thrown in for comedic effect, but it does mean that in universe, Migs knows about the Gungans enough to know how they talk, and maybe he's even met one or two of them. I'm still going to keep my fingers crossed that we will see actual Gungans in the show at some point. We've already seen the return and reprisal of some well-known Star Wars species, and Jon Favreau reinvented them, for example the Jawas and Tusken Raiders. And as I say guys, if Gungans do return, they can dial down the comedy, they can be a bit more serious, and well fitted for the tone and genre of the series. Now, staying on the same subject, just a bit of fun, I asked you guys in the community tab if you buy into the Darth Jar Jar theory. In other words, this is the theory that the entire time Jar Jar Binks was a secret Sith Lord, one who was pulling the strings all along, and one who utilised his cheerful and playful exterior as a mask. The breakdown of results was really interesting. It was always a tongue-in-cheek theory. I mean, sure, there is evidence, and we're going to look at that in a moment, but overall, it's just a bit of fun. So here's the breakdown. 43% said yes, 42% said no, and 14% said I don't know. This is based on 6.9 thousand votes, nearly 7,000. The consensus largely seems to be that even though Jar Jar Binks himself isn't a Sith Lord, because he facilitated the rise of Palpatine in an indirect way, he is just as evil. But there is a rabbit hole deep dive if you do research this enough, and I came across a really great video breaking down all the evidence from the prequels. Let's take a look at it. Now I will say guys, some of this is a little bit of a stretch, but there is some compelling evidence, and if you want to see it, you will see the Darth Jar Jar in some of these clips. So let's begin. So the evidence there was the fact that only like a Force user like a Sith or a Jedi could make a leap like that, could make a jump like that. But I do think the Phantom Menace visual guide did tell us that that's a very Gungan thing. Okay, so there's going to be a hand swipe, so look out for it. Okay, that's pretty interesting actually. So that was like a Jedi mind trick, like Qui-Gon did, like Obi-Wan did in A New Hope. And even if George Lucas did intend originally for Jar Jar to be a Sith Lord, he quickly abandoned it. And maybe the fan reception to Jar Jar Binks at the time was responsible for it. But maybe originally he was going to make this theory come true. I mean, this could just be a coincidence, this hand movement, but it does seem a bit compelling. Let's move on, there's 7 minutes of this. So it says he tricks the Queen into war.
You said people gonna die?
I don't know.
Gungans get pasted too, eh?
I hope not.
So it says he's offering military support.
We should got a grand army.
You are doing grand.
Okay, so basically it's saying here that he was negotiating military tactics, military support, encouraging Padme to go to war because she was the Queen of Naboo. And generally speaking, if you want to read into this a bit deeper, you can. But I do think it was originally intended just to be a minor conversation, just to include some more Jar Jar Binks, because he was a character George created to be a huge part of these films. And then here they're saying basically that maybe it wasn't just a coincidence. So the argument here is that he's faking being clumsy. It's all part of the act, when in actuality, he knows what he's doing. It's all a show. Think of it this way, guys. If you're a Dark Lord of the Sith, but you want to keep suspicion at a minimum, you could go the Palpatine route, come across as an eloquent, well-educated, and very smart politician. Or alternatively, go the Jar Jar route and do everything in your power to come across as silly, clumsy, and the person you would least suspect to be a Force user, let alone a Sith mastermind. Just keep that in mind if you're not convinced. So this is probably the best piece of evidence in terms of the story, in terms of the plot, because if Jar Jar was a secret Sith Lord, then he's furthering the master plan of the Sith, which by the way started about 400 years before episode 1. So the next bit of evidence is apparently based on the fact that Force users can move objects using the Force. A bit like Anakin here with the pear on Naboo. Okay, so I'm going to dispute this because we know that Jar Jar Binks, by the time of the New Republic, which is many decades down the line from this episode, he became a street performer, so he was used to doing these kind of things. He knew how to juggle and do these kind of gesture acts. You know what this is, guys? This is Dave Filoni following in George Lucas's footsteps, respecting the fact that George very much loved this character and plays into the comedy that we see in episode 1. Okay, so I've moved on to a different video because I found some more evidence in The Phantom Menace in live action.
The spaceport is not going to be pleasant.
The Queen wishes it. She's curious about the planet. The Queen wishes it.
So they're saying that he's moving his lips at the same time as Captain Panaka, almost as if Jar Jar is the one saying the words. and using Panaka as a puppet, ensuring Padme actually goes with them.
You Jedi are far too reckless. The Queen is not.
Queen trusts my judgment, young Ham.
Okay, to be fair, that is something a Sith Lord would say, crapping over the Jedi. Let's see that again.
You Jedi are far too reckless.
Again, scarce bit of evidence. Jar Jar is very much off camera. I don't think this is what George intended. And you know what, guys? Jar Jar Binks being a Sith Lord might not make any canonical sense, but as one of the comments said, Jar Jar doesn't need to be a Sith Lord. He's a force of nature all by himself, chaotic, clumsy, perpetually confused. And you know, as I say, it's just some really fun food for thought. If George Lucas did want to make Jar Jar a Sith Lord, I think he would have done it. I think all of this reading into it, some of it might be deliberate, but overall he abandoned the idea. And it is worth noting that Ahmed Best loves the idea. So with that said, my dear friends, share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. I hope you enjoyed this very different kind of video. May the Force be with you always.